Welcome to the Street Dog Podcast, brought to you by the Street Dog Coalition. We are an international nonprofit caring for lives on both ends of the leash. We provide free medical care and related services to pets of people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. I'm your host, Daria Tavana, and I'm also the Director of Development at the Street Dog Coalition. So if you're joining us live, you already know the drill. Go ahead, drop an emoji in the comments, say hello, let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know what your dog's name is, whatever floats your boat today, say something. We love hearing from you. And I want you guys to know whether or not you've tuned in before or if you're new here. On the Street Dog Podcast, we explore the world of animal welfare through the eyes of experts, street dog vets and volunteers, and through partner organizations as well. We share inspiring stories and provide updates on our advocacy work and the work of other organizations. So I'm really excited today for many reasons. But before I introduce today's special guest, I want to introduce my co-host, Katrina Weschler. Yeah! Executive Director of the Street Dog Coalition. Go ahead, Katrina. Let you say hi.
Hello. It is so good to be in this corner. I am pumped to co-host. It's always a pleasure and an honor. Daria is just one of the most dynamic podcast interviewers and hosts I know, and also one of the best development directors I know. So an honor. One of my favorite people, to steal a line from Hillary Wheeler. You make for a great team. Glad to be on it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katrina. I really, really appreciate that. And I'm really excited today. Guys, as always, if you're tuning in live, feel free to share comments, feel free to share questions. I just know that on today's episode, especially, I'm sure you're going to be feeling inspired to tune in. So let's just dive right in here. Okay. On today's episode, we have Genevieve Frederick with us. Yay! President, I need to get like a soundboard or something. No, I really don't need to do that. Genevieve is the president and founder of Feeding Pets of the Homeless. Feeding Pets of the Homeless, as you may know, is the first and one of the few national nonprofits providing pet food and emergency veterinary care to pets that belong to people who are experiencing homelessness. Now, this is an organization that focuses on addressing the nutritional needs of pets belonging to these individuals and also connecting them with the veterinary care that they so desperately need and deserve. So Feeding Pets of the Homeless does so much. We're going to get into it. But for the most part, they provide pet food and veterinary care for these animals, ensuring that they receive that necessary nourishment and medical attention so that we can really preserve that human-animal bond that is so meaningful to these individuals and to the pets that they care for. So welcome to the podcast, Genevieve. Yay!
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I am very pleased to be here on this podcast with you. And if your viewers have questions regarding my organization, I'm happy to answer any of those. I have to tell you that last Thursday, we celebrated our 15th anniversary.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey for me personally. And this is an organization that started in a bedroom in my house. And I saw it as a need that needed to be addressed. And no one else that I knew was even talking about pets and their homeless owners. And how were they feeding these pets? That's when I came up with that idea. That was probably in 2006. But when I got this idea that I could help all of these pets and it would happen across the country. I wasn't going to just have it be in my small community in Carson City, Nevada, but I knew that once I started this, it would become a national organization, and which it has. We even have partnerships with organizations in Canada as well. But getting back to the history of it, my husband and I were in New York, saw a gentleman with his dog. They weren't panhandling, they were just there. And I have seen homeless on the streets in San Francisco, Los Angeles, wherever we have traveled, but it never resonated with me. How is he taking care of this dog? He can't even take care of himself. So that's kind of when, I came back to Nevada from New York, and I started investigating. I started talking to people that deal with homeless every day, organizations, associations. And my question was, how many homeless on the streets have pets? And the answer, we don't know for sure, but we think maybe 5–10%. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go with that number. So then I realized that there were 3.5 million people homeless in America at any given time during the year. Times that by 5%, that's a lot of pets. So I immediately started thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? I went to my local doctor, Dr. Ailes, over at my own veterinary hospital. And I said to he and his partner, what if we put a donation bin in your reception area and ask people to donate pet food? And the benefit to your organization, your hospital, would be that people would come that maybe never have been to your hospital. They may end up buying more pet food from you to put in there. You will show the community that you're socially responsible and want to give back. Then I went to the local food bank and I said, if I can get you pet food, will you distribute it to the homeless and low income in our community? And it was like, yes, absolutely. We'll start asking people when they come in to get their weekly allotment of human food, do you have a pet and what kind? So that's when I knew it was going to work. So I immediately put a press release in our local paper. A reporter went out to the Carson River, talked to a couple that were living in their RV without electricity, without sewer, without water, and they had 2 large dogs. What would it mean to you if you didn't have to buy pet food? They said, oh, maybe we'll have enough money for our own medicines, and maybe we can save up to go to an RV park that does have electricity, sewer, and water. So that afternoon, after that article hit the newspaper, the hospital had probably 100 people come in there and give them pet food, including, because we're a capital, including some of our state legislatures. They sent their staff over and started donating pet food. So that was the start. After that, it has evolved over the 15 years. We now have 5 programs. Feeding is, of course, the number one. And we have our donation sites across the country have reported back to us that they've taken over 2 million pounds of pet food and supplies to local food banks, pet pantries, to encampments, if they have a homeless encampment in their community. So the food is getting out there. And so, and not all donation sites report back to us. So that was working. I had a mobile groomer in California who called me, and she said, I've been collecting pet food, and then I'm taking it out to a homeless encampment. And while I'm there with my van, I'm grooming these pets. And one of these dogs, so she was going out there with her church group, giving out food, clothing, blankets, pet food, and she was grooming these dogs, which is, she's such a compassionate and empathetic person. So she called me and she said, one of the dogs that I just bathed has got a horrible skin problem. If I take him to my vet. Will you pay for that? And
Oh,
I
wow.
went, okay. I
Yeah.
thought, how am I going to do this? I'm not even a nonprofit yet. I don't have my 501c3, but people were sending me money anyway. But that's beside the point. I put it on my own credit card, and that is how emergency veterinary care, that's our second program. That is our most expensive program.
Sure.
Just to give you an idea, we in the last, let's see, 18 months, we've spent $1.6 million at hospitals across the country just for emergency care.
Wow.
Our
And
budget, I'm
that's
sorry.
at a discount, right, Genevieve? That's at 20%
Yes.
off even.
Yes.
I remember
Yeah,
that
it
being.
is at a discount. In that
That's a
18
lot.
months, it is a lot. In that 18 months, we've treated, and I actually have the invoices for all of these pets, 1,990 pets that we've treated. And these pets belong to people that are experiencing homelessness. I think one of the things that your listeners will be kind of shocked at is that out of that 1,804 people, 62% of them are women.
Wow.
These animals are providing them with companionship, love, and
Mhm.
protection. It is so dangerous on the streets.
Mhm.
26% of our clients during that time frame, they are living in some kind of a vehicle. And another statistic is that 9% are homeless veterans. So that brings me to another one of our programs. I've got a memorandum of agreement with the VA system that any of their vets that they have taken off the streets, and they are providing them HUD permanent housing as long as those people adhere to the rules, that they will go for counseling, they will go for medical and physical disability help, addiction help, whatever their situation that got them into homelessness. They work with a VA case manager. When those animals need vaccinations or spay and neuter to get into that permanent housing, we pay for that. As long as they're in that housing situation and that animal is injured or ill, we'll pay for that as well. So in the last 18 months, we have spent of that 1.6 million, $66,000 of that went to veterans that are now homed, and we're treating their pets.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, that's a big pillar program of ours too, is Vets for Vets. We understand the service that they've given their country and how important it is for us to return that, and probably in spades, right?
Yeah, my
Yeah.
husband's a veteran of Vietnam, and so I get it.
Wow. Yeah, you do.
And
For
can I ask you a question, Genevieve? So I so appreciate you giving, I mean, and I know everything you're sharing with us now is certainly just a sliver of the incredible work that you do and of the impact that you have. And you're making it sound so easy because you're just an effortless kind of person. But I have to imagine that there are a lot of trials and a lot of tribulations and a lot of roadblocks that you encounter in having this incredible impact in helping over the years thousands and thousands of animals. So I'm curious to know if you can maybe shine a light on some of the most significant challenges that you've faced in providing food and veterinary care to pets of unhoused populations.
I would have to say our biggest challenge was during COVID. We had
Mm,
to send our staff home. They were using their personal phones to call hospitals. To give you an idea, in last year, our staff made and took 44,000 phone calls. That's just last year. During COVID, it slowed down a lot. The hospitals weren't taking appointments. We were having cases that were pending weeks out because we couldn't get an appointment unless it was a true emergency.
mhm.
Not only that, all of half of our donation sites shut the door. So now we were having our food banks calling us direct, saying we need pet food. We all saw those lines of people lining up to get food and pet food. So then, because we couldn't sponsor wellness clinics, we took that budget money and used that to purchase and drop ship pet food to these food banks that were out of pet food. So those were some of our biggest challenges was during COVID. It was hard on all of our staff. I mean, we were all trapped at home. Luckily, we have an IT group that was able to get us all onto our server from different locations.
Wow.
It was very challenging, but we made it. We made it through that.
You sure did. You sure did, with flying colors.
And I'm sure Katrina can also shine a light. I joined the Street Dog Coalition, this year, but I know that we also had to make a lot of changes internally, in terms of the way that we operate. Maybe Katrina, I feel like this is triggering for you, right? This is maybe bringing back some memories that you'd rather not relive, but what kind of similarities do you see here between Feeding Pets of the Homelessness COVID story and Street Dogs COVID story?
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty interesting. You mentioned that you had to cease your wellness clinics, and you put your budget for wellness clinics towards providing food, which is amazing. We tried to continue our wellness clinics, but we were a little bit more nimble with smaller teams, and we could kind of adjust, which I think when you're smaller, you can adjust a little bit more easily. With our street clinics, we just put a ton of safety protocols together, and we, enforced or encouraged the 6-foot distancing. We had a lot of slip leashes that we could kind of do handoffs with pets owners to the vet stations, so we can maintain that safe distance. Of course, our budget kind of dipped into extra funds for masks and antibacterial hand sanitizer when it was at a premium. So the costs that we normally wouldn't need to absorb, we did during COVID, but people really tried as best as they could to continue providing care. And it helps that our street clinics are all designed in a way to be outside. Some of them are indoors, and we're very grateful for when they can be indoors, especially during extreme weather, whether it's hot or cold. It is nice to sometimes have that indoor facility, but for the most part, we kept operating out of, in Fort Collins, at least, John's pickup truck. We just pulled up to where they had set up camp for folks that were living in tents, and we provided care out of the back of the truck. And I think you just kind of have to remain positive and remain nimble, and wherever you can flex, you flex. And
that's positive spelled PAWSITIVE.
We love a good pun at the Street Dog Coalition. It makes my day. Yeah, so we kept going. We kept going. It changed how we provided care, but it did not stop us from providing care. And we were super grateful for organizations that stepped up to provide food, like your organization, and locally in Fort Collins, the Colorado Pet Food Pantry. They're great supporters, Pooter Pet Supply and Feed. Every day they basically called asking what we needed and how they could provide. So that was something about COVID. I think a lot of people came together, a lot of wonderful organizations doing good work were able to reach out to each other and connect on a human level that sometimes when we're so caught up in our day-to-day, we forget to do. So that was it was a terrible time, but it was also a beautiful time when I think we were all problem solving together on the go.
Every day there's a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we have to stay positive and know that we are doing something that gives people hope, and it may turn their life around. We hear stories about that all the time. If it hadn't been for us stepping in and treating that animal instead of having it suffer and not be able to get to a hospital, it turns people's lives around. There's somebody there that'll help them. We're probably one of the few organizations that really answer the phone and that get these people in a hospital with their animal in a day. And it means a lot to them because they've called and called and called and nobody's answering the phone. During COVID, that was another challenge, was we had to rely on voice messages and then call these people back as soon as we could. So that, that was another challenge. But now we have 3 full-time case managers and we have an admin person, and all the calls go through her, and then she disperses them to whoever they need to go to. We get because we pay at time of service at these hospitals. And right now we have over 1,600 hospitals that are working with us across the country. They know who we are. They know we're going to pay them at time of service. So getting that phone call from a hospital with a diagnosis and an estimate of how much it's going to cost, and then we can pay them. So I think the average for one case is 6 phone calls going back and forth between the homeless person, getting homeless verification, then talking to a hospital, giving them a code to say, we are authorizing an exam to check out this animal. They call us back to tell us what they need. We need blood work. We need x-rays. This is how much we think it's going to cost. Okay, then, go ahead, do it. Then they call us back with the bill. So yeah, that's kind of how it happens. And many times a homeless will, drop us a note or an email or a voicemail saying thank you. A lot of times we never hear back, and it's just the way it is. I mean, I can tell you that when we do an intake interview, we ask them if they're disabled. We don't ask them, is it mental or physical? But I can tell you that 47% of the people that we work with are disabled in some kind. And what's interesting also, we ask them about service animals. 10% of the cases are for a service animal. And we don't ask for verification of that either. It could be an emotional, a companion, a true service dog, whatever the case may be. So yeah, that's kind of how we roll. But we try to get a lot of information about the animals, what breed they are, have they been spayed, do they need their vaccinations updated? And we will always pay for that. So if they're there for an ear infection or a teeth extraction, the doctor's going to update their vaccinations. We also tell the doctors that if the animal's going to be under anesthesia, if it's appropriate to ask the owner if they can neuter or spay that animal, get their permission, and we'll pay for that procedure as well. So
it's so wonderful, Genevieve. I can't help but notice how comprehensive the services that you provide are. And Katrina and I both know that you're really a trailblazer in this field. You were doing stuff like this at a time when no one was doing stuff like this. So to hear a bit about your programs and about your growth, and about how you have now developed this organization to a point where you have the capacity and the ability to have people answering phones and quickly working to connect individuals with the help that they need is remarkable. And I'm going to speak on behalf of Katrina and say that we're both just really inspired by the work that you do. And I know that we look to you guys oftentimes for advice, for leadership. And I know that in the past, we've even partnered with you for emergency care on at least one occasion for our clients. And I'm wondering if maybe you can maybe shine a light on how our collaboration or how collaborations similar to ours have helped you kind of expand your network and increase your impact as well.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. You're right. At one time I asked John, please tell your volunteers if they have an animal they can't treat on the street, call us. you can verify their homelessness. We will get that animal to a hospital in that community, wherever it is. And even if we have to cold call hospitals until we find one that will work with us and give us at least 20% discount, that's the kind of the minimum that we ask for. We get a lot of turn downs, I have to admit. There's some hospitals that don't want homeless people in their business. And during COVID, it was even worse because, they'd walk up with a dog and then they'd take the dog in the, well, anyway, we all know how that went. If you had to take your dog to the vet, you had to wait in the car while the dog was dragged in there, not happy about being separated. But when we do sponsor a wellness clinic with one of our hospitals that work with us and they want to do more, we'll say, hey, we'll sponsor a wellness clinic in your community. All we ask is that you donate your time and your staff time. We'll pay for all the hard costs. So, but if while you're out there doing this and there's an animal that needs to be treated, call us first, and then we will be able to pay for that treatment, whatever that is. So we kind of ask our wellness clinics and other organizations that are out working on the streets. They're coming up more and more as we see the need, and there is a tremendous need. So once we collaborate with them and tell them, hey, if you're in a situation and you can't help that pet, let us know and we'll step in and take care of it. We work with a lot of homeless shelters call us. Now their person and their pet are in that shelter and the pet has a problem, whether it's an illness or an injury. And so we'll work with domestic violence shelters as well as homeless shelters. So that brings me to one of our other programs where we will ship collapsible crates, metal crates, to homeless shelters so that they are not separated from their animal, so that they can be in that cot next to them in a crate that keeps everybody secure. Not all shelters allow pets. They want to make sure that they're in another part of the building because somebody may be allergic. There's all kinds of rules and regulations, and it just depends on the city, the county, and the state, actually. But I can tell you that last month we shipped 10 crates to a domestic violence in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Wow.
It's not one of our more successful programs, but there's still a need out there. So we're happy to continue with that program. Then I've already talked about our program with the veteran pet support with the HUD and the VA. So, and then the wellness clinics is the other thing that we do. So that's all 5 of our programs. I don't see us adding any more. That's about as much as we can handle.
Never say never, Genevieve. You seem very ambitious to solve this problem for good. So I wouldn't be surprised if you were back here with another program. And I appreciate you really giving us the lay of the land and giving all of our listeners a peek into all of these comprehensive services. And I want to give Katrina an opportunity to kind of maybe chime in and layer in a little bit about what the collaboration between the Street Dog Coalition and Feeding Pets of the Homeless has done for us as an organization. Katrina, I know that you can think of at least one specific example where we were able to kind of lean on Feeding Pets of the Homeless. So could you maybe give our listeners a bit of insight into that story and to the impact that this collaboration had?
Definitely. So Genevieve, you may recall this story. It was our Central Coast, California team, and there was a pet in need of some more emergency care, outside of the street clinic setting. And the team lead had 2 just sort of rock star volunteers, these 2 women that knew of your organization and were able to kind of be the boots on the ground to make the calls that were necessary and to communicate with the pet owner with, I believe, maybe your call center and make sure that those connections happened and the follow-up calls happened. And that's really where we lean on our volunteers. So all of our teams across the country are led by veterinarians who volunteer their time. And they also recruit other volunteers to sort of staff, quote unquote, the clinics, the wellness clinics that we put on. And so I really applaud our volunteers, especially those two women in Central Coast, California, who were willing to kind of go that extra mile, that were willing to, I think sometimes it does require a little bit of hand-holding and a little bit of persistence to make sure that phone calls are made and also returned and the connections are made. Because when our wellness clinic ends, we're moving on to the next site, and we might be back to the same site, but it might not be for another couple months. So I just want to say that we can't do this work alone. We cannot do this work in a silo. We can't do it without organizations like you, and we can't do it with amazing volunteers like these two women who took it upon themselves to make sure that the necessary connections were made. Because it does require a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra energy, and a little bit of extra compassion, right? It's not just one phone call and you're done. You know that. You said the average was like 6 phone calls. And when somebody's already on the street and experiencing homelessness and tired, I think it can really exhaust them to have to continue making phone call after phone call after phone call and just feeling like they're not being heard or they're not being seen. So I really value our volunteers and organizations like you that really make an effort to make sure that the need is met and that the human is addressed as a human, not as a homeless person, right? Somebody who is experiencing homelessness, but they are a human who cares very deeply about their pet, and their phone call should be returned just like anybody else who's visiting a vet clinic for their pet. So that's the one example I wanted to mention. And shout out to Dr. Alex in Central Coast, California, and his great team. So thank you, Genevieve, for having a great team on your end who can help facilitate those types of success stories.
We really appreciate it, Genevieve. And I want to leave you with this 2-part question. So you've given us, I think, a great window into the past and the present of feeding pets of the homeless. But I know the question on all of our minds right now is, obviously you guys have had an incredible impact on the lives of so many pets and their owners. I want to know, what are your future goals for the organization, and how can our listeners support and contribute to feeding pets of the homeless so that these goals become a reality?
It's hard to put what's going to happen in the future. What we're seeing is a lot of elderly going into homelessness because their pensions and Social Security are not covering the increasing inflation, real estate taxes, whatever the situation is. So we're seeing, and then the evictions started happening and they're rolling out. So we're seeing more and more. It's almost impossible to even guess what the future holds. But I know that this issue is not going to go away in our country anytime soon. And it's been around for generations, and unfortunately, I can see that it's going to stay that way. People can support us by going to our website, which is petsofthehomeless.org.
And I'm going to link your website in the show notes as well.
Oh, good. Thank you. But you can learn how to be a volunteer for us. You can learn how to be a donation site. If you have a business, you can learn how to get involved with our own wellness clinic sponsorships. As an individual, you can find where we have an interactive map that will show you where a donation site is.
Oh, wow.
So you can take pet food to. If you're on the other end and you need pet food, that will show you where to go get pet food. And if you need shelter that will allow your pet, we list as many of those that we're aware of on the website as well. We also list other resources that we know that are free. We don't list resources of low cost clinics or anything or insurance or any of that. If it's free, we'll list it on our website, or we will give. There are many times when the surgery that is needed for this particular animal, we can't meet that cap. And so we'll have our people instruct that homeless person to go on to our website, and there's a whole list of other organizations that may step up to help. So, and sometimes we will, depending on the client, we will actually go ahead and do that for them, because we do have a cap, and it depends on how many financial donations we get as to what that cap is. Years ago, it was $500. Now it's in the thousands because people are so generous. So that's how we're able to pay these expensive vet bills. We did a kind of a survey from 2021 to 2022. We saw an increase of calls 100%. And then we saw 77% increase on resource calls. So if we couldn't help somebody, we would say, hey, we can't help you because you can't verify that you're homeless, but check out these other places. So we would give, and our admin, Charlotte, she is excellent at giving people resources. But I can tell you that we increased 52% just on the number of pets that we helped between those 2 years. And the vet costs went up so much. And I understand it. I mean, inflation has hit everyone, including our doctors and our hospitals that we work with. And it is what it is. So we really we don't take any government money at all. We rely on private foundation grants and the general public to support what we do.
That's fantastic. And I've been on your website. It's an amazing website. The resources that you have outlined on that website for both people who want to contribute and for people who are in need of your services, they're so clear, crystal clear, and it's really remarkable to, like I said, hear you speak into all that you've accomplished with this organization. The numbers do not lie. Clearly, you have had an impact on so many communities and on so many pets of people experiencing homelessness who I know would be lost without your services, because without your services, they probably wouldn't still have their pet in their lives. So, Genevieve, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my animal loving heart for taking the time to chat with both Katrina and I here today. It's been an incredible conversation. Katrina, I'll also let you say your goodbyes.
Yeah, I'm just so thrilled, Genevieve. I know that you are one of those people who I know your name, I know your face, but we've never connected like this. So I'm glad that this podcast exists and we were able to converse. So kudos to Daria. She's the visionary behind this thing. But also just thank you for your work. It's hard to believe you've been doing this for 15 years. I want to ask, does it feel like just yesterday? Because to us, it does. I feel like we started in 2015 and it feels like that was just yesterday, but it must have gone by, I would think, in a bit of a blur.
It's gone by very quickly. Yeah. And I'm just very proud. This is my legacy. I retired before I started this, and then I got back into this, and my husband's wondering when I'm really going to retire.
Never.
That's what I say. They'll take me out feet first.
Oh, Genevieve, well, we are so lucky that you came back out of retirement to clearly live a life that is aligned with your passion and to make an impact on people experiencing homelessness and their pets. And I'll tell our listeners that I gave Genevieve an open invitation to come back to this podcast anytime she wants, because I think that Genevieve has an incredible story. And quite frankly, Genevieve's organization, just like our organization, needs your support. We need you to listen to our stories and to help the individuals that we are seeking to help through your donations, through volunteering. So please, please, please go to the website that is linked in these show notes and visit Feeding Pets of the Homeless's website and find how you can get involved, whether it's making a contribution, one time, a recurring contribution, donating food. I'm sure that you can rest knowing that these contributions are going to an incredible cause. And Genevieve, again, Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. You're really lovely, really inspiring. Like I said, a trailblazer, and we're just happy to know you and happy to have you in our corner. So thank you again, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yes.
Well, I just one last word. I am honored that you invited me, and I can't tell you how much I love the mission of Street Dog Coalition. And I'm happy, always happy to work with them and to collaborate whenever we can. It's been a real pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much, Genevieve. And thank you so much, Katrina. Until next time.
Until next time. Can't wait. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.